Well, we are officially in crunch time when it comes to the launch of Build a Better Wellness Biz. And as I've already pushed the launch date back a couple of times in the past, over the past month or so, I'm realizing that everything is never going to be perfect and it's never going to get done. So it's time to get it out there and just keep making iterations on the fly and continue to improve things. So in this week's episode of Podcast Launch Diaries, we're going to be talking about what I got up to in the past week and how I'm going to approach continuing to experiment and improve with things going forward. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, Jeremy here. Welcome back to week 10 of Podcast Launch Diaries. Like I mentioned in the intro, we are in crunch time. There is about a week and a half left until the podcast launches on Tuesday, September 8th. So a lot of the big things have been done and a lot of the little things have not. And one of the things that I've just had to realize, like I mentioned in the intro there, is that things are never going to be perfect. And I think that this is the case with every podcast launch ever probably, and there is just never enough time to get everything that you would like to get done complete before launching. So I'm kind of making the decision at this point just to get it out there and continue to improve as I go along. And so we're going to talk about some of the ways that that's going to be showing up and some of the ways that that's already I'm being made aware of this week, particularly when it comes to the social content and repurposing all of that stuff, where I wanted to have all this incredible content created beforehand and ready to go. And I'm realizing, well, I don't actually know exactly how I want to promote all this. And I do want to have a bit more of an experimental approach to some of these things. So we'll make little bits at a time, test them, tweak them, and continue to hone them over the weeks and months and potentially years ahead. So first things first, let's jump as always into Toggle to check out my time tracking from the past week. And so as you can see, it's another hefty week here, 22 hours. It's a little bit less than last week, which was 23, but still a lot of time spent on the podcast. And it's funny, I never actually looked at this before in the daily breakdown, but today I was before this video. And yeah, it's really like 4.5 hours a day, pretty much averaging maybe even more than that. Not including weekends, but it's a lot of time spent on the podcast. So like we've talked about many times in the past, if you're doing this to this degree, which obviously, like I know I answered the one question the other week that somebody left on the video related to, is this a bit overkill? And yeah, I think it is. And I'm definitely doing this to test some things out and to do a showcase of, really putting a lot of thought and strategy and effort into everything here. But by no means is this 100% necessary for everyone. And the other thing too is that I have batched a lot of interviews, which is a large, probably the biggest chunk of time, definitely the biggest chunk of time. I think I've already done 17 interviews. So right now we're in August and I have episodes scheduled through January. So yeah, I've definitely done a lot of upfront batching, and actually I have no interview scheduled for the next 2 weeks, and I am really excited about that. I could use the break after having to do so much research for the interviews and then doing the interviews themselves. I mean, the research takes the bigger chunk of time. It's probably anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of prep per interview, plus the interview itself, then plus the editing. So yeah, that adds up to a lot of time. And I have not spent that much time editing yet, but that is definitely going to be coming now that I have all these 17 interviews. So let's look at a little bit of the breakdown. Interview prep, social template design. So this was the big one here that I spent a lot of time on this week and that I'm really glad and relieved to have done, because it felt like that was this looming thing that what am I going to come up with? Am I going to be able to create anything that's, matches the rest of the brand in my mind kind of? And at this point I am doing all the design myself, and I have some skill as a designer. I'm very self-taught. My girlfriend is a designer, so I have a extra set of eyes there and some pointers, but actually when I showed her the design, she was pretty impressed with me, so I'll take that as a win for sure. Lots more interviews. Had 3 interviews this week. All of them were really great. And let's see what else we got. I re-recorded the teaser episode. I know I mentioned last week that I might do that, and that's because I had already recorded it in 2 chunks, and there was, to me, a noticeable change in voice tone and things like that with the second chunk of it. Maybe nobody would have heard that, but the way that I like to use teaser episodes, I'm going to be using that forever probably. and in a lot of places. So I wanted it to be perfect. So I just re-recorded the whole thing through. That did take a few takes, and I did make some tweaks to the script and things like that. But I did create that. I added in, did some solo episode recording, basically just plugging in another piece into an episode that I didn't address initially but wanted to get in there. And then we've got, some solo episode planning and set up the podcast host, which let's talk about that next. So I think I mentioned last week that I was thinking about going with Transistor.fm. I was pretty sure, and I ultimately did go with them. And again, one of the reasons was just, I was looking at a bunch of different companies, and if we go to their homepage here, really, I view podcast hosting companies as pretty much commodities. Like, they are all going to be good. You're not really going to go wrong with any podcast hosting company out there today, or any of the many reputable ones. And there are probably dozens of them at this point. And I've used Libsyn in the past for the past 5 years or so for all our client shows, for my past shows, all these things. And I've always had a great experience with Libsyn. Their support is great. But I was just curious about, like, am I missing out on something? I know they're one of the oldest and also maybe the biggest podcast host at this point, Libsyn is. And I wonder, like, are any of these newer companies doing anything that, is really different and interesting that I should be paying attention to? One of the things with Transistor is that you can have multiple shows for one price. And so that is actually going to be really useful for some client shows. I think I'm going to migrate a lot of clients onto Transistor at some point, or I have new clients there. And that'll be a way just to, save them money. I would probably, because it's a group kind of program, they'd be able to get a discount on that by going through my hosting setup, basically. We'll see how that works. I haven't dug into that at all, so maybe it won't work out that well. But I'm going to check that out. And actually, it's funny, they also have a private podcasting option through Transistor, which I could not find anything on Libsyn very easily. I did a few searches the other day, and one of my clients is actually looking to do a private podcast with some of her coaching stuff, specifically for her coaching community, which is a great use of that content. If you are a coach or someone like that who has a private membership community and you do calls that people may want to review, but they don't want to listen to the video, they don't want to have to download the MP3, a private podcast is a fantastic way to offer that to people. So I'm really excited to dig into some of that stuff and see how we can help our other clients use that as well for their own clients and group members and all those types of things. So other than that, those were a couple reasons I was looking into Transistor. There are some other companies that do similar things, but really it came down to like values of the company really and where they stood. And so you can see they have the Black Lives Matter here, and they have a whole statement that they've made here, which I was, I want to work with aligned companies with my values. And this is, very much aligned with the whole Build a Better Wellness Biz brand. And then they also are a supporter of 1% for the Planet, which so many companies that I look up to are supporters of. Patagonia comes to mind, maybe chief among them. So you can see my Patagonia hat, always representing. And so it was those little things. And so this is something that I've talked about before in my newsletter and some blog posts as well. It's like, a lot of times I think as podcasters, we don't want to get into anything political or anything that might turn off potential listeners. But really, those things will help some listeners decide to like really become, or not that they decide to become raving fans, but it helps people like really strongly identify with you and your brand. And there are so many companies out there that I am a rabid supporter of, because of their, their stance on social issues or political stance or whatever that might be. Whereas, maybe they're a clothing company and there's 10 other clothing companies that offer similar things, but I love what that company believes. So I'm a huge fan and I tell everybody about them and I like share their stuff on social media and all these things. So I think if you're in that situation where you like kind of just stick to your content and don't put your opinions or beliefs or anything out there, I think that's fine, but I think you are probably missing out on getting those like raving fans who really can connect with you on a deeper level when you start aligning on all these different beliefs and opinions and mindsets. So something to think about. Not a good fit probably for every show, and depending on what your opinions or beliefs are, if they are really unpopular or can cause backlash, I'm not going to say like do that, because obviously the internet can be a pretty horrible place. If you go scrolling through comment sections on YouTube or any of the platforms really, But it is something to think about, and it's something that in my experience, putting those things out, it's going to turn some people off and they may leave, but the people who stick around and gravitate towards you are going to like love you even more than they did before, or maybe they didn't love you before and they do now. So that's really the main reason why I ended up going with Transistor. Like I said, I think most podcast hosting companies are pretty much commodities. You're not going to have any problems with any of them. So, no pressure to go with Transistor or any other. But so far, I will say that I have been really impressed. The setup process, having never used Transistor before, never signed in, never logged in, never done a trial, nothing. I think it took about like 20 minutes to set up, maybe, and I don't think I was super focused on that even, and I didn't have my like description written and all these things, and that was like setting up the first episode, setting up everything. So it was a really quick process, really straightforward. I would say it seemed more straightforward than Libsyn. Very much so. So I after now using it as well, I'm very impressed with it, and I would definitely recommend it. This is just a look inside the dashboard. I published my teaser episode, but it has not been actually submitted anywhere yet, so no downloads to speak of. I'm also curious, I know it has an integration with ConvertKit, so for my mailing list, I'm curious how this will work, if this will actually generate any signups to the newsletter. I'm fairly doubtful that it will, but we'll see. And I'll probably use more of my like website marketing and opt-ins and those types of things to generate mailing list signups rather than this, but it doesn't hurt to have it out there. And so there's other mailing service connections as well. So that is something that's kind of cool. Let's see. So that setting up Transistor, that was one of the big tasks that remained to be done. I mentioned I re-recorded the teaser episode and submitted it or added it to Transistor. I also made an audiogram in Headliner out of it. And so basically just to use my main cover art for this one, because it is the teaser episode, it's not a specific episode, and then just have the transcription of the entire episode here. This one, I had never done the, I don't know what you call this, the animated like text being filled in as it goes through. So like changing color from, as you can see, like that. And that one took a long time. Usually I just do the normal like boxes of text that like appear at a time. This one took a long time to do, and that's partly because it is a 3.5 minute long teaser episode, so it's just quite a bit. And then having changed the text size and everything, oftentimes it messes with the timing of the captions. And usually, I just realized this with this form, this animated form of the text, usually if you're just doing the boxes like it would normally be in Headliner, the default setting, the timings don't really matter quite so much. But here, if the timings are off a little bit, just the animation really lags from what's happening in the actual audio that's being spoken. So that took a long time. I wanted, like I said, I use these teasers for everything for a long time. It'll be on the website. I'll share it on social, just forever, and continue to cycle that in. And so I did want it to be high quality, but it took a long time to do that. So I would probably not advise spending that much time on every single episode's audiograms. I just do not think that they're actually worth that much time or get that many people back to listen. But I'm happy to have this one as the teaser episode to be really well done. So excited to share that in the next week in prep for the launch, and hopefully get some interest and some visibility going. So that was one of the other kind of promo pieces coming together. And then the big thing that I spent a lot of time on this week was coming up with these social templates. And so we've got just a kind of text title card for each episode. So this is just the title of the episode, guest name, and the logo down there. Then we've got another kind of cover photo type card. Again, guest name, logo, title, and photos. And then we've got a Facebook version of that same thing. Some different quote cards, 3 different styles there. I don't know if I'm going to use all of these or if I'm going to stick with one of them or what's going to happen there. We will see how that goes. And then also I did actually, so this was another big thing, I did hire a video editor who is going to, basically my process is going to be, I record everything on Zoom, and the Zoom video file will get submitted to otter.ai, which is a transcription service that I've talked in the past about before. And basically that will get all the timestamps. And then as I'm going through and editing, I'm going to flag all these clips that I think, okay, this will be a good, 2 to 3 minute video here. And then I'll just like send that text and be like, okay, look out for this from this text till this text. And the video editor will look it up in the transcript because the timestamps will be different after I've been editing and tweaking everything. And he'll just look it up there, clip that clip out, maybe put like an intro and outro type thing on, and that'll be that. So I'm looking to do probably 3-ish videos per episode. And I've talked about this a little bit before, the way I structure my episodes. There are 2 questions right at the end that are not actually going to make it into the episode, but they're just kind of like summaries of what the episode was about. And so I ask the guests just to summarize what we've talked about. Those are never going to appear in the actual podcast version of the episode, but they're really easy to find because they're right at the end of the video. And so they're easy to clip out and can create the videos from that. So that makes it a lot easier in finding some of that video content to clip out and saves time there. So I have not got the video editor onboarded or anything yet. We've just agreed to begin working together, and I needed to come up with a template for one thing to send him so that he knew what to create. And so this is my square video template. I may also do a vertical. I'm not a huge Instagram user by any means, and stories, I don't know, I may have created like 5 stories in my life on Instagram, so I don't know if I'm going to do that. We'll see how that goes. And that's one thing with all of these graphics. This is one of those areas where I'm like, okay, I want to be everywhere, and I think most of us always want to be posting everywhere. And so I'm kind of just going to see, once the podcast launches, when I am promoting it actively, where am I posting and where am I getting traction? And then maybe I'll create more content for those platforms, and maybe I'll create less content for other platforms. And so I kind of started with Square because Square is so versatile. It works on many platforms. And so I think I'm just going to go with that for now. And I'm fairly active on Twitter, but that's very much more text based. So I'm just going to be repurposing some of that text content from the show notes and the quotes and things like that, and putting that on Twitter, probably without graphics. On LinkedIn, I'd also like to be fairly active. So I may create graphics around that. We'll see. It's a work in progress. So we're just going to see how things go as I get promoting things and as more content gets created, as these videos get created, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll paste where appropriate. So that's the kind of plan right now. And like I said, I wanted to have all this stuff, this like massive amount of content before the launch. And now I'm realizing, well, I don't have a clear idea of what's going to work and what's going to resonate with people and how I want to promote this on an ongoing basis. So let's just get started and iterate from there. So I am going to create a bunch more of this type of stuff for these initial episodes that are going to be going live a week and a half from now. And then we'll see after that how that changes. And I'll be sure to make updates as well along the way. And you can also follow me on social to see how that goes. And so yeah, that is basically how things are coming along with the graphics. What are we in right now? Photoshop. Yeah. So if we go over to Illustrator, just some kind of general assets here as well. And nothing too exciting. And one of the goals as well for this coming week for the video editor is to create a brand guidebook that basically just has like colors, fonts, all that type of stuff that they need to know in order to design things that look good and are on brand. So I've been looking for some templates that I can just plug my own stuff into, and had a bit of a tough time finding some, but I think I may have found one that works. So we'll see, and I may end up just creating my own really simple, like one sheet version of the brand guidelines, and that'll be that. But that's basically what I spent my time on this week: interviews, doing this, doing some solo episode recording, that type of stuff. And if we go and look at my goals for next week, let's look at what we got going on. And actually, I don't think we did the recap on what happened this week. So we did set up podcast hosting. We kind of started on this and have a little bit of that done now. Did some more of this. Scripting and recording the lead magnet videos. So this, like I mentioned last week, I think I'm just going to push that out for maybe a month or so until and just say like sign up for the wait list here. We're going to release this, whatever. So that's not a huge priority right now. And setting up the website, I'm just waiting. Now I have the first draft of the first show notes done. So now I can actually start creating some of that. And the episode editing is done on a couple episodes. So this coming week is actually where I'm going to be doing this now. So if we look ahead to goals for next week, again, set up website. So that's going to be the podcast page and the designing the podcast page and designing the individual episode show notes pages as well. So I'll be working on both of those now that there is stuff to actually fill them out with. Onboarding the video editor, so sending over the designs, getting that branding sheet together so that he can, create something that actually looks good. And he is a professional video editor, so I'm hopeful that he can bring some insight and ideas that me not being a video editor, I'm not thinking of. And so hopefully that's going to be really great. And let's see. Repurposing content for initial episodes. So like I said, I've got kind of the one episode mostly done as I've been building out some of those branding guidelines and the templates and all that kind of stuff, but getting it for the initial batch of 3 launch episodes. And I would like to actually start releasing some of that next week as well, so that people are kind of queued up and knowing that the launch is coming on September the 8th, that Tuesday. And so next week is the final week before that. So I do want to build up some interest before and tease some of the stuff. So this Finnish lead magnet mini course here. So I actually have multiple lead magnets in the works right now. So I have a wellness specific kind of course that I'm working on that I have kind of a bullet pointed out. That's the one that I'm going to do the waitlist on and push that back for a month or so until I have time to actually get to that. But I have another one in the works that I do want to have ready for the launch of the podcast. And this one is basically already completed. It's a podcast guesting mini course. And so podcast guesting on other shows, like this is great for podcasters, but it's also great for anyone who's looking to get more exposure, whether or not you have a podcast. So it's really useful to everyone if you are looking to build an audience. And so I have this course already created, already recorded, and already up online actually, but it was made initially for an app. So it's in vertical mode. And I want to just repurpose that, redo the slides so that it is in normal, video mode. In landscape, basically widescreen. So that I hope won't take too long. I hope I can. I kind of need to get it done for the launch of the podcast because I do promote it in the initial episodes. So that is something that I do need to get done next week. And then I also want to send promo material and info to the initial guests who are going to be whose episodes are going to be airing on launch day on Tuesday, September 8th. So this is I think a lot, and I am really, really grateful that I have no interviews next week or the week after to either do or prep for, because that has just taken up so much time. If we look back again at this week, so we've got 3 hours, and that brings us up to 5, almost 6, 7, 8, 9 and a half, 10, 12 or 11. 13. So, okay. We're looking at like 13 hours worth of interview prep and interviewing itself. So that is a lot of time that can be put towards other better pursuits, or not better pursuits, but, things that really need to get done right now as we are leading up to the launch. So I think that is it for this week. I'm excited to get this out. I'm also a bit just ready to be done with the launch mode and just get into the flow of producing the podcast. And I feel like leading up to the launch, it's always the most kind of nerve-wracking. And, we all want that massive reception, and I'm not expecting a massive reception. I don't know that many people who get a massive reception on their podcast launches unless they already have a huge audience. And because for me, this audience is it's basically starting from scratch. I have an audience of podcasters and not a huge audience of people in the wellness industry, other than my existing clients. And so, I'm hoping that many of them might share it, but I'm not expecting that. I've heard this quote in the past, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something about expect a lot from yourself and not from anyone else, basically. And I really have been thinking about that a lot. So often when we're creating things, we want all this attention and the likes and the shares and all these things from other people. And generally we're disappointed when we get our hopes up for that. And so I think for me, I'm really focusing on like, okay, what's the best I can do? And then just keep doing that. And eventually over time, over months and years, that is going to pay off. So, I'm in it for the long haul. And I think that is the only way to make podcasting successful. Almost no one has any immediate success unless, again, like they've built up an audience elsewhere, which in that case, they've put in that work, that initial grinding work of showing up consistently over weeks, months, years to build that audience. And then they're just focusing that audience's attention on a new platform, in this case, podcasting. So for me, I'm not expecting a huge launch by any means, but you never know. And I'm just going to do my best and push it out there on launch day and try to get as many people to share it in my community and subscribe and rate and review and all those things. And just, that's really the first. That's like, I think often the launch feels like the end step, but really that's the first step of getting it out there and then just continuing to do the work week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out for as long as it feels valuable. So that's my kind of philosophy around it. I'd love to hear your approach to how you view your podcast in terms of like time commitment and time horizon as well. Like how long are you comfortable investing in order to see results? How long have you been podcasting and what results have you seen? At what point did the snowball start really picking up speed? Let me know in a comment below this video and I would love to hear from you. So that's it. If you have any questions or anything else, please put that in the comments as well, and I will be happy to address those in next week's episode, which will be the final episode before launch. So we're going to see. I have no idea what that episode is going to be like. It either could be that I have everything completed and I can take the weekend off and just relax and be confident that everything is ready to go for Tuesday on the launch. Or it could be the complete opposite, where I am scrambling and saying like, oh, I'm gonna have to work all weekend, like 15 hours a day to get everything done for the launch on Tuesday. So who knows? You'll have to wait and see. Come back next week. And until then, take it easy and I will talk to you then. Bye.